I've missed you so much, I thought I was going to die. Zola, now that you're back, we have to celebrate big time. No holding back. Inside the rideshare SUV, Kiara, Zola's best friend who had just returned from overseas, enthusiastically squeezed Zola's hand. For sure, did you really think I was going to run off somewhere? Zola replied, her smile lighting up her whole face. I booked us at the St. Regis, the best spot in Atlanta. We are not sleeping tonight, Kiara declared with a grand air of ceremony. Zola felt a little uneasy. She's still the same. Do we really have to go somewhere that expensive? We could just hit up any bar and chat. No way. For you, for me, and for our long-haul friendship, it has to be the absolute best, Kiara insisted, completely inflexible. Hey, so did Langston not come to pick me up? Zola asked casually, brushing a strand of hair away from her eyes. He took off this morning. A work trip suddenly came up. Said he won't be back for 3 days. What are the odds? Seriously? Yeah, he left in a huge rush. He even took our bigger SUV, the one that's easier to drive. He just told me to take good care of the kids, Kiara said, pouting slightly. You know how men are. Work always comes first. Anyway, let's stop talking about him. Tell me about my godchildren. Anything fun happen? Hearing about her children, Zola's face instantly glowed. You wouldn't believe how smart Malik is. The day before yesterday, his dad hid some candy and Malik climbed onto a chair to find it. Then he went and gave half to his sister Nia. I caught them both with chocolate smeared all over their faces, and he looks at me totally straight-faced, mimicking his dad. Mom, we're sharing the wealth. Ha! So young and already knows how to run a play. Who does he take after? Who do you think? Zola's eyes curved like 2 crescent moons. Between laughs and stories, they arrived at the St. Regis in no time. While Kiara checked in at the front desk, Zola, standing beside her, was still caught up in a passionate story about her daughter. Our Nia is totally obsessed with painting right now. She treats all the walls at home like they're her personal canvas. Zola was about to tell her how Nia had drawn her father as a giant pumpkin when Kiara's voice suddenly cut off. Someone had grabbed her arm tightly. Za, look over there. Kiara's voice was tense. Zola turned her head in the direction her friend pointed. A panoramic glass elevator was slowly descending from the upper floors. Inside were 2 people, a man and a woman. The man was wearing the gray polo shirt she had personally picked out for him. The profile of his face was so familiar it was seared into her memory. It was Langston. His arm was wrapped gently around a young woman's waist. He was leaning in to whisper something in her ear with a sweet smile that Zola hadn't seen in ages. The woman threw her head back, laughing out loud, and snuggled into his embrace. Zola's head started to spin. Just that morning before leaving the house, Langston had hugged her and told her how much he'd miss her during his work trip, that an urgent project had come up and he had to go in person, that he'd be back in 3 days tops, that he was taking the family SUV, and that she should take a rideshare if she went out just to be safe. All those affectionate words turned into sharp thorns digging into her chest. The noise around her seemed to fade. The chat with her friend, the kids' antics, the joy of the reunion, everything lost its luster in an instant. All that remained was the horrible scene unfolding before her eyes. Ding. The elevator reached the ground floor and the doors slowly opened. Langston stepped out, still embracing the woman and laughing. Then he looked up and saw Zola. Their eyes met. The air froze. The smile on Langston's face shattered like ice. His hand circling the woman's waist hung suspended in midair. He was paralyzed as if struck by lightning. The woman next to him, Rhea, also looked startled when she saw Zola and Kiara, but her confusion lasted barely a second. She quickly regained her composure. Far from pulling away from Langston, she clung even tighter to him, gripping his arm with determination. Rhina lifted her chin and looked Zola up and down. It was the brazen look of a victor examining her rival. That sorry son of a Kiara, trembling with rage, pulled away from Zola, ready to leap at them. Zola stopped her. Don't. Her voice was soft but contained an unbreakable firmness. When Kiara turned around, she saw her friend's face was terrifyingly calm. No tears, no accusations, not the slightest hint of emotion. Zola looked at the couple as if they were 2 complete strangers. That extreme calm was more unsettling than any hysterical outburst. Langston's lips trembled several times. He seemed to want to say something, offer an excuse, but the words wouldn't come out. He wanted to approach Zola, but Reina clung to him with all her might. Zola finally looked away, turned slowly, and gave a distinguished smile to the reception clerk who didn't know where to look. "Excuse me, I'd like to cancel the reservation." The clerk looked at her, stunned. Zola paused, and then added in a clear voice, "I think we'll go somewhere else. This place looks a little dirty." After saying this, without glancing back at anyone, she took a still, furious Kiara by the arm and walked firmly toward the exit. From behind, Langston, who had finally managed to break free from Reina, ran after them. Zola, wait up, listen to me, I can explain. It's not what you think." Zola ignored him completely. She didn't slow her pace. The cell phone in her purse started vibrating like crazy. She didn't need to look to know who it was. As she stepped through the revolving door, the daylight hit her eyes. She calmly pulled out her phone. The name Langston was flashing non-stop on the screen. She looked at it for a moment and slid her finger across the screen to put it on silent. The whole world seemed to mute and a clear, precise plan began to form in her mind. Phase 1. Collect the evidence. In front of the St. Regis, Kiara hailed a taxi. "Zola, come to my place. Don't go home. How are you going to face that snake?" Kiara said, worried, gripping her by the shoulders. Zola shook her head. Her expression was incredibly serene. "I'm not going home." "What are you going to do?" "Pick a fight with him. In your state, I can't leave you alone. I'm not going to fight." Zola opened the taxi door and got in. Then she turned to Kiara. "Kiara, you go ahead and check in and take the room. Get some rest. I'll call you later." Her tone allowed no argument. Kiara wanted to say more, but seeing her friend's clear, firm gaze, she swallowed her words. "All right, be careful and call me if anything happens. I'll be there in a heartbeat." The taxi pulled away, leaving the luxurious hotel behind. Zola leaned back in the seat and closed her eyes. The phone's vibration had stopped, but in its place, WhatsApp messages started pouring in one after another. All from Langston. "Zola, where are you? Please listen to me. It's a misunderstanding. Don't be mad. Let's talk at home. Please, let's talk face to face. I don't have anything going on with that woman. It was just a client obligation. Seriously." Zola read the messages without expression, as if watching an actor's clumsy monologue. She didn't reply. Instead, she looked up the St. Regis's number and called. They answered instantly. "The St. Regis, Atlanta. How may I help you?" said a kind female voice. Zola's voice turned sweet and affectionate. "Hello. This is Mrs. Zola Holloway. I just wanted to make sure my husband's room is ready. He just got back from a trip and I want him to be comfortable." The receptionist, surprised by the call, hesitated for a moment. "One moment, please. Let me check." A moment later, the voice returned. "You are Mr. Holloway's wife, correct?" "Yes, confirmed." "Mr. Holloway has already checked in." "What a relief," Zola continued in a worried tone. "He told me he was bringing a very important guest this time. I think her name is Reina. Does that sound right?" "Yes, that is correct. Mr. Holloway and Miss Reina checked in together." Zola's fingernails dug gently into the palm of her hand, but her voice remained cheerful. "Oh, perfect. That's wonderful. You have to treat clients well. Out of curiosity, what kind of room is it? If it's a standard room, I'd like to pay extra to upgrade it. I don't want us to look cheap with an important guest." The receptionist, moved by her perfect wife demeanor, replied without suspicion. "Ma'am, that's very thoughtful of you. Mr. Holloway reserved one of our best couple suites with a panoramic view. So don't worry, it's the best we offer." Couple suite with a panoramic view. Such beautiful words. "Got it, thank you so much." Zola hung up and pressed the red record button on her phone. A crisp audio file was quietly saved to her list. Only then did she look out the window. Night had fallen. The city lights slid across the glass. The city where she had lived for 10 years felt strangely alien tonight. The taxi stopped in front of her house, a sprawling executive home in Buckhead. Zola paid, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. As soon as she neared the front door, it swung open from inside. Langston stood there, his face anguished. One of his shirt buttons was wrongly fastened, and his hair was messy. Seeing Zola, he ran toward her as if she were his savior. "Zola, you're finally here. I thought I was dying." He tried to grab her, but Zola took a step back, dodging his touch. It was a subtle movement, but the distance it created was unmistakable. Langston's hand hung in the air. He instantly switched his expression to one on the verge of tears and said in a choked voice, "Zola, trust me, what you saw at the hotel is not what it looks like. That girl, Rhea, is the daughter of a very important client for my company." As he spoke, he watched Zola's reaction. "The project is so crucial that I had no choice. She kept insisting that she wanted to try out the best suite. I was only playing along for business. I swear nothing happened between us. I'm innocent." He pleaded with utter sincerity, his eyes bloodshot. Once upon a time, Zola probably would have believed him, but now his voice just sounded loud. "Are you done?" she asked coldly. Langston froze. If you're done, sit down." Zola walked straight to the living room couch and sat down, as if she were in her own office. Langston, overwhelmed by her authority, sat down obediently on the opposite sofa, like a defendant awaiting judgment. The house was silent. The children must have been asleep. Zola, without looking at him, took out her phone. Langston watched her nervously. He couldn't understand how his wife, always as docile as water, had suddenly become so strange, and he desperately searched for a new excuse. A clear female voice rang out from the phone, the St. Regis Atlanta. "How may I help you?" Langston's pupils contracted. He heard the recording of Zola using that affectionate voice he knew so well, pretending to be his wife and asking about his room. When the receptionist said, "Mr. Holloway and Miss Reyna checked in together," Langston's face began to turn pale. He wanted to lunge and snatch the phone, but his legs felt like lead. The recording continued. "What kind of room is it? If it's a standard room, I'd like to pay extra." "Ma'am, that's very thoughtful of you. Mr. Holloway reserved one of our best couples suites with a panoramic view." When the last words rang out clearly, the final trace of color vanished from Langston's face. He slumped onto the sofa as if all his strength had been drained. All his lies and excuses had become a ridiculous joke in the face of that recording. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Zola stopped the recording, raised her head, and looked at him in silence. In her eyes there was neither anger nor sadness, only a deadly calm. "I'm giving you two options," she said. Her voice was clear and cold with no trace of emotion. "First, tomorrow at 9 a.m. we meet in front of the Fulton County Superior Court. An uncontested divorce. We split the marital assets 50-50. I get full custody of the children. You will have a flexible visitation schedule." Langston abruptly looked up incredulous. "Divorce?" She was asking for a divorce. "No, Zola, not divorce. I was an idiot. Truly. Please give me another chance." He tried to stand, but Zola's voice stopped him. "Sit." It wasn't a shout, but it carried an undeniable authority. Langston's body went rigid. Zola, looking him dead in the eye, presented the second option. "Second, I send this recording and the photos I took in the hotel lobby to your parents, to all the executives at your company, and to all our family members." She paused. Each word was like an ice pick. "I will make sure everyone sees what kind of man you are, and your clients will see very clearly how you handle your business." Langston's body began to tremble uncontrollably. Looking at his wife, so cold and unfamiliar, he felt a bone-deep fear for the first time. This woman, the one he thought he had under control, was hiding a side he didn't know at all. With trembling lips, he barely managed to speak. "Since when did you get so terrifying?" A faint, almost imperceptible smirk played on Zola's lips. "Since the precise moment you trampled on my trust." At 1 a.m. the doorbell of the Buckhead home rang insistently. Langston, grasping at a final lifeline, rushed to open the door. His parents, in their pajamas, waited with worried expressions. "Langston, what's going on? Why did you make us drive all the way here at this hour?" His mother asked immediately. "Dad, Mom, please help me." Langston fell to his knees on the floor with a dull thud. His acting was worthy of an Emmy. "I don't know what's wrong with Zola. Just because I talked to a client for work, she comes home and demands a divorce. Dad, Mom, how many years have we been together? We have 2 children. How can she want to end everything overnight? What's going to happen to this family?" He painted himself as a man who sacrificed for his family, enduring work-related humiliations only to be misunderstood by his wife. His father frowned while his mother looked pityingly at Zola, who was coming down the stairs. "Sweetie Zola, what happened? Everything can be fixed by talking. How did you two end up talking about divorce?" Before Zola could open her mouth, Langston subtly winked at a small figure in a corner rubbing his eyes. Malik, his 12-year-old son, approached. "Mom, please forgive Dad," he said, tugging on Zola's clothes. "Grandma says, all men make mistakes, and if Dad knows he messed up, he's still a good father. We can't lose Dad in the house." These were ideas Langston had undoubtedly instilled in him bit by bit. Zola's heart broke seeing her son so manipulated. Before she could reply, another door opened. Naya, aged 10, ran out in her bear-themed pajamas, outraged. "Malik, what are you saying? Dad's the one who messed up. He betrayed Mom." She ran to Zola and hugged her leg, glaring at her brother. "If you do something wrong, you have to face the music. Why does Mom have to suck it up and forgive him? My teacher says when you mess up, you have to own it and take the punishment." "What would you know?" Malik retorted, red with anger. "Dad earns the money for this house. Without him, where would we live? What would we eat? Do you think you could still go to your expensive art classes? Dad makes the money. Dad only gave money, but Mom gave everything to this house. Without her, do you think we'd have good food and clean clothes every day? Dad only gave money, but Mom gave us love." The two children started arguing heatedly in front of the whole family. Langston's father's face hardened. "Enough, both of you," he shouted. "Honey, please. They're just kids, don't scare them." His mother intervened, trying to mediate. "Zola, you tell us, dear, what exactly happened?" Zola calmed her daughter by stroking her back, then looked serenely at her in-laws. She hadn't engaged in the argument or cried. She simply took out her phone and in front of everyone replayed the recording. "Mr. Via Holloway reserved one of our best couples suites with a panoramic view." The clear female voice echoed in the silent living room. Every word was like a slap across Langston's ashen face. He never imagined Zola would be so ruthless. When the recording ended, Zola turned off her phone and, as if presenting a report, recounted point by point Langston's lie about the work trip, the embrace in the hotel lobby, and his subsequent excuses. She did so without emotion or blame, with impeccable logic. A deathly silence fell over the living room. Her father-in-law's chest rose and fell with agitation. He looked at his kneeling son and his lips trembled. His mother-in-law's face also reflected shock and disappointment. "You're worse than an animal." The father-in-law finally exploded. He grabbed a teacup, intending to throw it at his son's head. "Fernando, please," his wife grabbed his arm. "Don't get yourself worked up over this bum. You're going to have a heart attack. I swear I'm going to kill him. He has dragged the whole family name through the mud. Our reputation," he shouted, pointing at Langston. "And you have the nerve to beg Zola for forgiveness after the filth you committed. What are your kids going to learn from you? How could I have a son like you?" Langston collapsed onto the floor, speechless. All his plans had vanished before the irrefutable evidence and his father's fury. The mother-in-law helped her husband sit on the couch and approached Zola. She took her cold hands, her eyes red-rimmed. "Zola, dear, we are so sorry. We failed in raising this worthless man," she said, her voice full of guilt. "The fault is entirely his. We are on your side. Do what you have to do. This family will support you." Her words were the final judgment of that family court. Langston was utterly defeated. The saviors he had called had become the mountain crushing him. His father, still breathless, pointed at Langston. "From now until the divorce is final, you stay locked up in this house. Don't even think about stepping out." Then he told his wife, "Take his phone and laptop, cut off all his communication with the outside world. I want to see with my own eyes if he tries any more foolishness." The in-laws decided to stay the night in the house to personally supervise Langston, who was completely isolated. Like a beaten dog, he was sent to the guest room under his father's shouts. When the living room finally calmed down, the mother-in-law sadly hugged her granddaughter and sat Zola down next to her. She leaned into Zola's ear and whispered so only they could hear, "Zola, don't worry. I have every receipt for this house in my head. I know every dollar that Bum earned and spent over the last few years. We'll go over everything together tomorrow. Not a single penny for that scoundrel." The next morning, sunlight flooded the living room. The atmosphere at the breakfast table was tense. Langston, with dark circles under his eyes, hadn't slept a wink. His parents, seated at the head of the table, wore grim expressions. Zola emerged from her room with a thick folder. She placed it on the table with a firm thud. "This is the list of all marital assets since we got married. She pulled out a stack of papers and slid it toward the center of the table. Langston took the list, and at first glance he felt dizzy. It was detailed, terrifyingly detailed. It included their 3 apartments, the 2 cars, the bank names and account numbers of all significant deposits, the name and amount of every financial product, and even the purchase date, code and acquisition price of every stock and investment fund. The figures were accurate down to the second decimal. It wasn't a list. It was a net. Langston's hands began to sweat. Some funds he had diverted and thought were perfectly hidden appeared here with total transparency. His father took the list, skimmed it, and gave a cold laugh. "Look at this. Look at how Zola managed this house. And you? What have you done?" His mother, seeing the list, felt even more pity for her daughter-in-law. "Zola, how much work did you put into this?" "It was my duty, Mom," Zola replied calmly. She looked at Langston. "Review it. If there are no issues, we will base the division on the total of this list. If you agree, we'll save ourselves a lot of trouble." Langston's mind raced. He flipped through the pages with his back soaked in cold sweat. Most of the assets were undeniable. There was clear proof. But suddenly he remembered something. A small spark of hope ignited. One asset was missing from that list. A small rental condo in Midtown that he had secretly bought with a project bonus 2 years ago. No one knew about it. Its value had risen considerably. If Zola didn't know about it, he could keep that last safety cushion. Suppressing the frantic pounding of his heart, he pretended to meticulously review the list and finally nodded. "Yes, I've looked at it. No problem," he said, his mouth dry. Zola watched him in silence until he finished. Then she gently drummed her fingers on the table. "The rental condo on Peachtree Street, Unit 702, Building 368 Meta." Every word Zola spoke added a layer of power to Langston's face. When she finished reciting the exact address, Langston felt his bones melting, and he nearly slid off the chair. He looked at Zola, terrified, his lips trembling, unable to utter a sound. "How does she know? How is this possible?" Zola, oblivious to his shock, continued in a monotone voice. "The copy of the purchase agreement and the title report are in your home office in the 3rd drawer hidden in the false bottom inside the personalized folder I gave you for your birthday, the one you said you loved and would keep your most important documents in." Langston's mind went blank. That drawer, that false bottom, his most secret hiding place. All his secrets had been exposed to this woman for a long time. It wasn't that she didn't know, it was that she had allowed him to hide it. A fear he had never felt before coursed through his body. It was then he understood that all his past cunning was nothing more than a child's game in Zola's eyes. Langston's back was completely drenched. He looked at Zola as if seeing her for the very first time. "If you have any objections to this list," Zola's tone remained impassive. "I have no problem discussing it in court." She paused and delivered the final blow. "I remember every deposit we've had during our marriage, including, of course, that black money that was difficult to register in the books." The words black money exploded in Langston's ears like thunder. He looked up sharply with an expression of absolute panic. The bribes to secure projects, the kickbacks, and the shady deals he had pocketed. If all that came to light in a trial and triggered a tax inspection, the consequences were unimaginable. This was no longer just about divorce and asset division. It would be his social ruin and could even land him in jail. Langston understood everything. The uncontested divorce, the peaceful division. It was the greatest act of generosity Zola had granted him. He had no more room to negotiate. "I agree," he managed to grind out. He felt all his strength drain away. "I agree to all your conditions." Zola gathered the papers from the table and put them back in the folder. "Good," she said, standing up. "I give you 3 days. Settle your relationship with Miss Reyna and disappear from my sight forever." Having said this, she prepared to leave the room. Langston slumped in the chair with a lost look, like a soulless doll. He had lost an absolute defeat. As Zola left the room, her phone vibrated briefly. It wasn't a call. It was a text message from an unknown number. The content was very short. "If you encounter any difficulties with the bank proceedings, do not hesitate to contact me." Zola paused for a moment. Who was it? Who was observing everything from the shadows, anticipating even her next obstacles? She looked at the agreement signed by Langston and put it away. She didn't feel joy in victory. Everything was just getting started. Although the divorce agreement was signed, the asset division was the real battleground. She knew Langston. He wouldn't easily let go of what he considered his. For the moment, she couldn't dwell on the message's origin. The most urgent thing was to secure what belonged to her and her children. The next day, Zola went to the bank alone. She needed to request a preventive freeze on the marital assets. It was a measure to prevent Langston from diverting or squandering the shared wealth during the divorce waiting period. She took a number and sat down. Client A37, window 3, please. Zola stood up and went to the preferred service window. Inside, a man in his 30s with gold-rimmed glasses and perfectly combed hair was waiting for her. His badge read, David Rodriguez, client manager. Hello, good morning, I'm here for a transaction. Zola handed him her driver's license and a copy of the family record. Mr. Rodriguez adjusted his glasses and took the documents indifferently. What transaction would you like to perform? His tone carried a slight air of arrogance. I would like to request the freeze of some of the joint accounts in my name and my husband's Langston Holloway. The manager's eyebrows arched. He looked at her closely for the first time. A freeze on an account. He let out a slight chuckle. Mrs. Holloway, that's not a simple process. Very extensive documentation is required. I brought it. Zola handed him another folder with a legal report from her attorney and documents proving the divorce process was underway. Mr. Rodriguez reviewed the papers very slowly, frowning and shaking his head as if looking for a pretext. After about 10 minutes, he returned the folder. I'm sorry, ma'am, we cannot process this. The certificate of family mediation issued by the court is missing. He pointed to a corner of a document with complete certainty. Zola frowned. Mr. Rodriguez. According to bank regulations, the key documents for this procedure are the attorney's report and proof of the divorce process. The documents I presented meet all the requirements. The certificate you mentioned is not mandatory. Before coming, she had consulted an expert lawyer and knew the procedure perfectly. The manager's face showed clear displeasure. He hadn't expected a seemingly docile homemaker to know so much. One thing is regulation, and another is reality, he said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. At this bank, we have our own internal risk management guidelines, and if I say it's necessary, it's necessary. Without that certificate, nothing can be done today. His attitude was inflexible. Zola instantly understood it wasn't a procedural problem. Someone was deliberately obstructing the process. Langston had acted fast. Knowing what she would do, he had pulled strings to buy time. Understood. Zola didn't argue further. She gathered her documents and stood up. It wasn't worth wasting time on someone like this. Just as she turned to leave, a calm male voice sounded beside her. Mr. Rodriguez, you seem very busy. Zola turned around. A man had stopped next to her. He was dressed casually but elegantly, without a tie, but his air of confidence was imposing. He wasn't addressing her but the manager. Seeing him, the arrogance vanished from Rodriguez's face. He jumped up with a flattering smile. Mr. Vance, what brings you here? If you had notified us, I would have come out to greet you personally. He bowed almost 90 degrees. The man whom he called Mr. Vance ignored his servility and glanced at the paper Zola held. Then he approached the window, and in a low voice that only the two of them could hear, he said a single word. Zola didn't hear it clearly, but she thought she heard Atlas. A single word was enough for Rodriguez's face to turn paper white. Drops of sweat appeared on his forehead, and he began to tremble. Mr. Advance. He stammered, unable to articulate a full sentence. The man had already straightened up and didn't look at him again, as if he had only passed by chance. Rodriguez remained paralyzed for a few seconds and suddenly turned to Zola with a smile more forced than a sob. Ma'am, 1 moment. He rushed out of the window and blocked her path. I am terribly sorry. Please excuse me, I don't know the protocol well, I confused the procedures. He kept bowing. The transaction you wish to perform does not require that certificate. Not at all. I don't know what I was thinking. Please come back, I'll process it right away, immediately. His change in attitude was so drastic. He seemed like a different person. Zola looked at him calmly without saying anything. She glanced at the back of the man heading toward the exit and then sat back down at the window. In that case, I appreciate it. No. The pleasure is mine. The rest of the process was incredibly fast. The papers that were a problem before were now processed without the slightest obstacle. In less than 5 minutes, everything was ready. "Ma'am, everything is handled. Your requests have been applied." He respectfully handed her the receipt. Zola reviewed it, confirmed everything was in order, thanked him, and left. As she exited the bank, she saw the man again on the entrance steps. He was looking at his phone as if waiting for someone. She took a deep breath and approached him. "Sir, thank you for today," she said sincerely. The man looked up. Recognizing her, he smiled slightly. "It was nothing. I just overheard it by chance." He paused and added that Langston Holloway doesn't have a very good reputation in our sector. Zola felt a pang. "Indeed, you know Langston. In any case, I truly appreciate your help." The man smiled and pulled a business card from his pocket. It was a simple design, a name and phone number on a white background. "Elijah Vance. If you have any similar problems again, give me a call." Zola took the card. Who was this man? He seemed to know a lot about Langston. And that word Atlas, what did it mean? "Thank you." She put the card away. Elijah nodded and headed toward a black sedan waiting at the curb. He got into the car, and it disappeared into traffic. Zola stood there, thoughtful, looking at the card. Just then her phone vibrated. It was a WhatsApp from Kiara. "Breaking news. I just found out through a contact that the biggest competitor to Langston's company, the one stealing all his projects, is Vance Group Holdings. And they say the CEO's last name is Vance." Zola's pupils contracted. She looked at the name on the card again. Elijah Vance. He was the CEO of Vance Group Holdings. And if so, why was he helping her? The 70th birthday party for Langston's father, Mr. Holloway, was a major family event. Being a family of some renown in the city, the banquet was held in the ballroom of a 5-star hotel. The venue was packed, and the atmosphere was lively. Before the party began in a private room, Langston was pleading with Zola, almost on his knees. "Za, please, I beg you, today is my father's birthday. Everyone coming is family and business partners." He grabbed her arm with a pitiful voice. "Let's not argue today, okay? Just for one day. Save my father's reputation and our families. We could pretend we're a happy couple like before. When the party's over, I'll do whatever you say. Anything." Zola looked at him coldly. "Pretend? Yes, pretend for my dad. Do it for him." "Fine," Zola accepted, much to Langston's surprise. He was ecstatic, but she pulled free of his grip, her voice devoid of warmth. "This is the last time, and don't touch me." Langston's smile froze for an instant, but he nodded quickly. Okay, I won't touch you. As long as she cooperated, everything would be fine." The banquet began. Zola, in an elegant dress and an impeccable smile, appeared on Langston's arm. He walked with his back straight, as if nothing had happened. Together, they toasted their in-laws and received congratulations from relatives. Langston and Zola looked great, still as in love as ever. Definitely, Zola is an excellent daughter-in-law. She takes care of the house, and she's gorgeous. Hearing those compliments inflated Langston's ego to the point that he started fantasizing that everything could go back to the way it was. Maybe if Zola wanted, they could still save their marriage. When the party was at its peak, the ballroom door suddenly opened. A woman in a white dress appeared in the doorway. It was Rina. She wore heavy makeup, but with a pitiful touch, and she held a carefully wrapped gift. The murmuring in the ballroom stopped abruptly. All eyes focused on the unexpected guest. The smile completely vanished from Langston's face. He never would have imagined Rhea would dare show up there. Rhea ignored all the looks. She only had eyes for Langston, seated at the main table. She walked straight toward him. Her goal was clear: to announce their relationship in the most important setting and leave Langston with no escape. "Sweetheart," she approached him. Her voice was low, but filled with a coquettish reproach. "I heard it was your father's birthday and I came to congratulate him. Why didn't you tell me anything? Were you afraid I'd bother you?" As she spoke, she tried to take his other arm as if it were her rightful place. A soap opera-level drama was about to erupt in front of everyone. The relatives' glances became significant. Whispering began. Langston's father's face was already a dark shade. His mother-in-law, nervous and embarrassed, didn't know what to do. Langston panicked, pale as a ghost. He wanted to push Reyna away, but he couldn't cause a scene. He looked at Zola with pleading eyes, hoping that, as always, she would save the situation for the family's sake. Everyone expected Zola to explode, to flip the table, to claw at the mistress, but the smile on Zola's face didn't change at all. She even released Langston's arm and stood up. She approached Rhea with grace and dignity. To everyone's astonishment, she kindly took Rhea's hand. "Miss Rhea, is that right? I'm so glad you came." Raina froze. That reaction wasn't in her script. "Come, don't just stand there, have a seat." Zola enthusiastically led her to the center of the main table between her father-in-law and Langston. Then she approached the master of ceremonies and naturally took the microphone. Her clear voice resonated throughout the ballroom. "Dear guests, family and friends, a moment of attention, please." The ballroom fell silent. Zola smiled, scanned the room, and finally fixed her gaze on the still bewildered Raina. "Taking advantage of this very special day, my father-in-law's 70th birthday, I'd like to share some very happy news with all of you." She paused and put a hand on Raina's shoulder. "I want to formally introduce this beautiful lady, Miss Rhea. She is the true love my husband Langston found outside of our home, his soulmate." A murmur ran through the ballroom. Raina's face turned ashen. She tried to pull away, but Zola held her firmly. Langston wasn't just pale, he was trembling from head to toe on the verge of fainting. Zola didn't care about the reactions. She turned to look directly at her husband, whose face was gray. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had a penetrating coldness. "Since you found true love, you shouldn't keep wasting time with me, right?" Her smile grew even more radiant. "Why don't we settle everything today right here in front of all our family and friends? Let's sign our divorce agreement. Let me, Zola, give you my blessing." As she finished speaking, she didn't take out a lipstick or powder from her purse for touch-ups. She took out 2 impeccably printed copies of the divorce agreement and a black pen. Clack! She placed the agreement and the pen on the rotating centerpiece of the main table. The sound echoed louder than any slap. The ballroom was plunged into stunned silence. Everyone was jaw-dropped at the shocking scene. Langston, seeing the agreement, felt his legs give out as if he had just received a death sentence. Rhea was also in shock. She never imagined her plan to displace the wife would become her own public execution. "You worthless man." Langston's father jumped up, trembling with rage. He pointed his finger at him, his eyes bloodshot. "If you don't sign that paper today, forget that I am your father. The Holloway family doesn't need a scoundrel like you." Raina's face was ghostly white. She finally understood that she wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. She was simply the knife Zola had used to stab Langston at his most vulnerable point. Sitting at the children's table, Malik watched his mother on the stage. Brilliant and powerful, with a very complex look. The commotion at the birthday party ended with Langston under the furious gaze of his father and everyone present, signing the document with a trembling hand. Zola collected her copy of the agreement and left that nauseating place without looking back. A few days later, Zola received a call from Malik's teacher. The teacher's voice was stern. "Is this Malik Holloway's mother? I'd like to speak with you about his behavior at school." "Yes, speaking, teacher. Lately, rumors have been circulating at school about your family. I don't know if you're aware, but Malik has been bragging to his classmates that his father is going to replace you with a new, younger, prettier mother, and he's saying his mother is a useless cast-off. These words are having a very negative influence on the other students. There have already been some confrontations, and other children have started excluding him. I urge you to come to the school. We need to address this matter seriously." "Understood, teacher. I'm on my way." Hanging up, Zola closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Langston's brainwashing of their son was much more severe than she had imagined. At the school, Zola found her son in the teacher's lounge. Malik stood with his neck stiff and an angry look on his face. Seeing her, he glanced at her sideways. Zola didn't scold him in front of the teacher. She simply said calmly, "Thank you, teacher. Could you leave us alone with him for a moment?" Of course. Zola led Malik to a quiet corner of the playground. The afternoon sun was warm and no one was around. Malik stuffed his hands into his pockets in a defiant stance. Zola didn't mention what happened at school. She simply asked him a question. "Malik, what do you think is the most important thing to sustain a family?" Malik was perplexed. He hadn't expected that question. He answered almost by instinct. "Money." Without money, would we live in this big house? Would I go to the school? Could Naya go to her art classes? Grandma says Dad is the pillar of the house because he makes a lot of money. These were the ideas Langston and his mother had put into his head. Zola shook her head. Let me tell you a story. Instead of arguing, she began to speak softly. There were two squirrels who built a beautiful house in a tree together. One of them went out every day to find the strongest branches and the prettiest leaves to build and decorate the house. The other went out to find the tastiest acorns to store for the winter. They shared the tasks and trusted each other. Their home was the warmest in the forest. But one day the squirrel looking for acorns met another prettier squirrel. He started secretly giving the other squirrel some of the acorns he collected, and he lied to his partner, telling her that the year's harvest was bad. Finally, one day, the squirrel building the house found out everything. She realized that the foundation of their home, a home full of trust and warmth, was eaten away and hollow inside. When the story ended, Malik remained silent. He had understood it. Zola crouched down to his level. She looked him in the eyes and with complete seriousness asked him her first question. Malik, when you grow up and get married, if one day your wife, with the excuse that it was just a mistake, takes the money you saved together and gives it to another man, would you be okay with that? Malik's pupils contracted. He opened his mouth but said nothing. Zola continued staring at him. And when you're suffering from the betrayal, if your own son takes the side of the person who betrayed you to applaud her and points at you, saying you're a useless failure, you deserve to be abandoned, how would you feel? The two questions fell like heavy hammers on Malik's conscience. He had never thought about the problem from that perspective. He had always believed that his father having a younger woman was a symbol of his power, and that his mother leaving was a sign of her inability to keep a man. But now, putting himself in the betrayed person's shoes, a shame and humiliation he had never felt before flooded him. His face turned red and his eyes filled with confusion. He wanted to object, but the words wouldn't come out. Zola watched him in silence. She knew her words had had an effect. She stroked his hair gently, and her voice softened again. Malik, remember, Mom wasn't abandoned. Mom chose a life with more dignity. And your father is the one who broke the rules and now has to face the consequences of his actions. You can choose whose side you're on. I'm not going to force you. But before you choose, think carefully about what kind of person with what kind of values you admire and respect. Having said this, she stood up and didn't add another word. That night, when Malik returned home, he was different. When Langston tried to win him over with a new toy, as always for the first time, he ignored him, went to his room and closed the door. Late that night, Zola's phone rang. It was a message from Malik. It was short, only a few words. Mom, I'm sorry, can I live with you and Nia starting tomorrow? The shocking scene at the birthday party was the last straw for Langston, or rather two straws. The other was the message from his son. Overnight, he became the laughingstock of his entire family and business circle. A poor man publicly humiliated by his wife and forced to sign the divorce papers. His parents completely turned their backs on him. His father refused even to eat at the same table as him. Until you cleanly resolve that paperwork. Don't call me father. At home, glacial treatment outside, relentless pressure from Raina. Honey, now that you're divorced, when are you going to introduce me to your parents? When are we going to see our new house? I saw a place with a pool in Sandy Springs. I think we deserve it. And what about the 5-carat diamond ring you promised me? Langston felt nauseous hearing Raina's excited voice on the other end of the phone. He was socially ruined with 1,000 problems, and all she cared about was things. Shut up, he finally yelled into the phone. There was silence followed by Raina's offended sobs. Are you yelling at me, Langston? Don't forget, if it weren't for me, you never would have decided to divorce Zola. I'm your one true love now. How can you treat me like this? Langston hung up and smashed the phone against the wall. The screen shattered. True love. He saw it clearly now. It wasn't love, it was a sentence. Under all that pressure, Langston collapsed. He looked like a man with no energy. In a few days his eyes had sunk and his beard had grown, making him look 10 years older. Finally, he faced reality. He couldn't beat Zola. He had lost completely. With a new phone, he dialed that familiar number, trembling. After several rings, she answered. Zola's voice was as calm as ever. Yes, Zola. It's me, Langston said, his throat dry. He couldn't say anything else. There was a long silence on the other end. Zola didn't rush him or hang up. She simply waited. That silence was more humiliating for Langston than any taunt or reproach. He took a deep breath and with all his strength managed to say, I agree to all your conditions. All of them. Good. Zola's voice showed no emotion. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the courthouse. Having said this, she simply hung up. Langston slumped onto the sofa. The phone slipped from his hand. It was all over. The final settlement was reached quickly. Custody of Nia went to Zola, and custody of Malik went to Langston, although Malik would spend every weekend with his mother. As for the assets, Zola received half of the marital wealth, including the Midtown rental condo that Langston thought he had hidden, and additional compensation for the black money he had accumulated. Langston, already numb, signed without negotiating. The next day, they left the courthouse together, each with a document certifying their divorce. Langston looked haggarded and hunched over as if he were ill. Zola was the opposite. She walked upright, and even without makeup, her face radiated a new light. She breathed deeply the open air. She felt liberated. Just then, Raina arrived, running. She was dressed dramatically and clung to Langston. Sweetheart, it's done. That's wonderful, she said, shaking his arm, oblivious to his expression. Finally, we can be together. Come on, let's go look at houses right now and choose the ring. Our wedding has to be spectacular so everyone can see you chose correctly by staying with me. Langston's face was a mix of exhaustion and irritation. Can you just shut up for a minute, please? Zola, observing the ironic scene, smiled slightly and turned away. Looking up, she saw a familiar black sedan parked across the street. The window slowly rolled down, revealing the kind face of Elijah Vance. He seemed to have been waiting for a while. Congratulations, Elijah said with a sincere smile. Where are you heading? I'll drive you to start your new life. Zola hesitated for a moment and then smiled. She opened the door and got in. The car pulled away smoothly, leaving the couple who were still arguing behind. Take this, Elijah said, handing her a folder from the passenger seat. Zola took it, surprised. These are records of other assets Mr. Holloway tried to divert through offshore accounts a few days ago. I thought you might need them, although I see you don't anymore. Zola stared at Elijah, stunned. How did he know all that? Even more than she had investigated. Seeing her surprise, Elijah smiled and finally told her everything. Yes, I'm the CEO of Vance Group Holdings. For business competition reasons, we had been thoroughly investigating Langston Holloway's company for a while. In the process, we learned about some of his family matters. He looked her in the eyes with clear admiration. Your coldness and determination profoundly impressed me. The car stopped at a traffic light. Elijah turned to her and with a touch of expectation said, To celebrate, I'd like to invite you and little Naya out to lunch. He added, Oh, and my company is developing a new theme park project that you might be interested in. A few months later, Zola and Nia moved into a new house with a small garden. Life had finally returned to a calm rhythm. With the assets she received, Zola made stable investments that provided her with a comfortable income every month. Mom, look, I drew another butterfly. Nia, 10, ran up to Zola, who was pruning flowers in the garden. Under the sun, her daughter's smile was radiant. Zola put down the shears and stroked her hair. This was the life she wanted. Elijah had integrated into their lives naturally, like a friend. He never forced things, but he was always there. On weekends, he would show up with books and help Naya with her science experiments. If the weather was good, he would take them to a farm to pick strawberries. If Zola forgot to eat because she was immersed in investment reports, he would magically appear with a delicious dinner. His presence was a comfortable warmth, neither overwhelming nor distant. Nia adored her Uncle Elijah, so wise and caring. One night before bed, Nia whispered in Zola's ear, Mom, can't Uncle Elijah be my new dad? He's much better than Dad. He helps me with homework, listens to my school stories, and never gets tired. Zola's heart skipped a beat. She hugged her daughter, feeling a slight blush. Why do you say that, honey? Because when Uncle Elijah looks at you, he has stars in his eyes like you do when you look at me. Her daughter's innocent words created a ripple in Zola's heart. She realized that her heart, frozen by a failed marriage, was slowly melting with Elijah's quiet warmth. And she also realized that she looked forward to every one of his visits. In contrast to Zola's peaceful life, Langston's was chaos. Kiara, over one of their coffee dates, brought her up to date on the latest gossip. "You wouldn't believe it. That Rain chick is fleecing him. One day a purse, the next day a watch." Langston's company was already struggling because of Vance Group Holdings. And on top of that, he lost more than half his wealth with you. He doesn't have the cash to satisfy her anymore, so they spend all day arguing. And Malik is getting more rebellious every day. He got the worst grades in class, and when Langston said something about it, Malik shot back, "Worry about your own issues. You're in no position to lecture anyone." Langston almost fainted. Now he's realizing how hard it is to raise a kid. He thought just giving him money was enough. Zola listened in silence. Those people and those problems seemed like they belonged to another life. Another weekend, Elijah took them to the country. While Nia ran after a kite, Zola watched her from a blanket, smiling. Elijah, seated beside her, never took his eyes off her. "Yes, Elijah," Zola suddenly said. Elijah looked into her eyes, very serious. After a moment, he gathered his courage and said, word for word, "I no longer want to just be your support. I want to be your right hand and your left hand, your life partner. Will you let me?" His voice was calm and sincere. Zola's heart stopped for an instant. She didn't reply, but the blush on her cheeks and the unmistakable happiness in her eyes said it all. In that perfect moment, a cell phone ring broke the magic. It was Langston. Zola hesitated, but answered. Langston's voice on the other end was a desperate cry filled with tears. "Zola, please help me. Malik. Malik has disappeared." Zola jumped up. "What happened? Explain yourself." "We argued about his grades. I said a few things and he ran out of the house screaming that he couldn't take it anymore. He didn't take his phone. I've been looking for him for half the afternoon and he's nowhere to be found. He must have gone to your place. He only listens to you now. I bet you hid him." His tone was a mix of impotent rage and projected blame. Zola felt it wasn't even worth arguing. "Don't move from the house," she said, and hung up. Elijah, seeing her anguish, stood up and approached her. Without asking unnecessary questions, he took her hand, which was cold with tension. "It's going to be okay," he told her firmly, looking into her eyes. "I'll go with you. We have to properly close the past to truly start the future." Zola looked at him and the anxiety in her heart miraculously calmed. She nodded firmly. Without another word, Elijah took her hand and with the other he lifted Nia into his arms. "Nia, let's go find your brother. He misses us." The three quickly gathered everything and got into the car. The vehicle sped through the night, but Zola's mind raced even faster. They reached Zola's community in a short time. In the distance, under a street lamp, they saw a small figure huddled next to a hedge, his head buried between his knees. "It's Malik." Before the car completely stopped, Zola unbuckled her seatbelt and ran out. "Malik." Hearing her voice, the small figure started and lifted his head. His face was stained with tears and his eyes were swollen. Seeing his mother, he burst into sobs. He leaped from the hedge and stumbled into her arms. "Mom, I don't ever want to go back to that house again," he sobbed, trembling. "That woman is always fighting with Dad. They throw things, they yell. Dad only cares about giving me money, but he doesn't listen to me, and she says I'm a nuisance. And because I got bad grades, Dad told me I was useless, a failure, just like you." Every word was a dagger in Zola's heart. She hugged him tightly, stroking his back. "It's okay, Malik. It's over now. Mom is here. No one will ever treat you like that again." Elijah approached, took off his jacket, and placed it over Malik's shoulders. "It's cold out here. Let's go inside and talk at the house now." While Malik slowly calmed down, Elijah sat next to him with an airplane model they had left unfinished last time. He didn't mention Langston or Raina. He simply spoke to him like a friend. "Malik, in life, sometimes a man has to face situations he doesn't like. Running away doesn't solve anything. Today, you were able to escape that house. But what about tomorrow and in the future? Your father made a mistake and is now paying the consequences. But you are different. You have the power to choose. Your mother, with her intelligence and courage, won you that right. The right to choose what kind of person you want to be. If you want to be like him, someone who blames others and avoids his responsibilities, or if you want to be like your mother, someone who faces them bravely. Those words were more effective than any sermon. Malik looked up, looked at Elijah, and then at his mother. For the first time, he seemed to understand the weight of the word choose. "I want to be with Mom and Nia," he said in a low but firm voice. The matter was resolved through lawyers. Langston, overwhelmed by his own problems, had no energy to argue. He accepted the change of custody immediately. From then on, Zola and Elijah took charge of Malik's life and studies. A year later, on an early summer afternoon, while Zola was reading a story to Nia in the garden, Elijah approached her with a bouquet of freshly cut roses. Malik, piloting a drone, made it fly over their heads. A small velvet box hung from the drone. Elijah knelt. Zola opened the box, revealing a simple but brilliant ring. "I don't want to be your friend anymore. I want to be your husband, the father of Malik and Nia, your partner for life. Will you marry me?" His voice was calm and full of devotion. Zola covered her mouth, her eyes full of happy tears. Malik and Nia shouted beside her, "Say yes! Say yes!" Zola, laughing and crying, nodded with all her strength. "Yes, yes, I will." Their wedding was an intimate and warm ceremony. Zola, in a white dress, smiled with a happiness that sprang from her soul. Malik and Nia dressed up, scattered flower petals as they walked, their smiles brighter than the sun. Decades passed. On the garden swing, a gay-haired couple sat together. Zola leaned on Elijah's shoulder, looking into the distance where their grandchildren ran and laughed on the lawn. Nia had become a prestigious architect, an intelligent and independent woman like her mother. Malik, under Elijah's guidance, had become a responsible and successful man with his own company and, most importantly, a happy family that he adored. He often visited his mother and Elijah, and they would hold long conversations about life and business. He had understood long ago that the decision his mother made back then had been the best thing for everyone. The sunset bathed the garden in a warm golden color. Elijah took Zola's hand, marked by the passage of time, and whispered in her ear, "How lucky I've been to have you in my life." Zola turned to her husband. They looked at each other and smiled. "Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.